one, and handing over the White House, essentially the keys to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, to a man who he believes is a threat to this country and a threat to democracy. Personally, what does this mean to Joe Biden?
Well, I think for him, it will be seen as kind of a moment of validation, right? A little vindication. Finally.
But let's look at the politics of it all too, though, Bill, because what would this deal have gotten done had Donald Trump not said repeatedly all hell is going to break loose in the Middle East if the hostages are not released? And we don't believe that all of them will be released by the time that he takes the oath of office behind me at noon on Monday. But then you've got Benjamin Netanyahu, who's under pressure from the left, and all of these protesters that have occupied Hostage Square for well over a year now. We're putting pressure on him. And then he's got his coalition partners on the right who are saying, don't you dare sign a deal with Hamas. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of politics at play here, both the pressure on Biden and pressure on Netanyahu.
Yeah, I guess as it relates to us here in the U.S., you have two very strong competing political factions here. An outgoing president and an incoming president, and both of them have high incentive to get this done, and perhaps to claim credit for getting it done. John, there's huge incentive on both sides here at home. I would be very curious to understand how deep the incentive is in the competing factions within the Israeli government at this moment.
All right, so we continue to watch these live pictures. We will wait on any new details to come out of the Middle East, obviously, especially Benjamin Netanyahu's office with that statement following the news saying no deal yet, possibly tonight. They are still working out every detail of this. We'll see where it goes. Hemmer, thank you very much. Also, a big thanks to Martha for coming on as well. John, we know that all of this is happening with a lot happening back home here with these confirmation hearings.
And there's a number of them happening. We saw the Pete Hegseth confirmation hearing yesterday. It was only one round of questions. Pam Bondi's confirmation hearing is ongoing, excuse me, now. And they're just heading into the second round of questions here. And do we have this ready yet? No, we don't. Okay, apparently the foreign minister of Qatar is speaking, so let's go back here on the Middle East for a second.
Also includes an increased flow of relief and humanitarian aid to all parts of the Gaza Strip, as well as the rehabilitation of hospitals, health centers, bakeries, and allowing the entry of fuel and civil defense equipment, as well as basic necessities for displaced people who lost their houses as a result of the war. In phase one, Hamas will be releasing 33 Israeli captives, including civilian women and female recruits, as well as children, elderly people, as well as civilian ill people.
Can you imagine that?
Wounded in return for a number of prisoners who are being held in Israeli prisons. Regarding phases 2 and 3, the details will be finalized during the implementation of phase 1. The state of Qatar reaffirms the necessity of both sides committing to the implementation of all 3 stages of the agreement in order to prevent civilian bloodshed and in order to shield our region from the consequences of this conflict and ensure that we have lasting peace in the region. Qatar will continue its joint efforts with the Arab Republic of Egypt and the United States of America to ensure that all sides are following through with their commitments and engagements and ensure that all 3 stages will be implemented. We look forward to seeing regional and international efforts coming together in order to assist with relief and humanitarian aid and supporting the United Nations in its attempts to enter aid into the Gaza Strip. Qatar will spare no effort to offer help to the families in the Gaza Strip and doing everything that's necessary to alleviate the suffering of the residents of the Strip. Since October 8th, we in the state of Qatar saved no effort with the constant, under the constant and watchful eye of His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. We worked day and night in order to reach this moment. And since our mediation efforts succeeded last November to guarantee the release of 109 hostages and return for a number of Palestinian prisoners, we have been working continuously in order to prevent bloodshed and put an end to the war machine and restore hope for our region in a prosperous future that will allow our people to dream of a better future. For 411 days, meetings and contacts continued with our partners and both sides of the conflict until we reached this long-awaited moment today. However, today begins a responsibility for both sides who will be supported by the international community and the mediators in order to achieve complete success. And this is what we will be focusing on in the coming days and weeks. I would also like to express our thanks to all our partners in the region and internationally for their support to our efforts all the way until we reach this deal. And in conclusion, I would also like to remind our brothers in the Gaza Strip that Qatar will continue to offer support to our brothers in Palestine, and that this happens under the close watch and the watchful eye of His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, day and night, hour by hour, and minute by minute. We would like to tell them we give thanks to Allah for bringing us to this moment today, and hopefully this will be the last page in the days of the war. We would also like to call upon all sides to fully commit to all the articles of this agreement and to continue implementing these procedures and measures in accordance with the agreement. The state of Qatar will continue working jointly with its partners in order to make sure that this deal is implemented in full and that calm returns to the Gaza Strip in a sustainable manner, and we will never give up the people of Gaza. Thank you. First question, Sky News.
Hakim from Sky News. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. You, as you say, have been working on this deal for many months. And the question is, why now? Why this moment? And was it pressure from the incoming Trump administration that got it over the line?
Oh, he'll deny that.
Well, thank you very much, Hilda, for this question. Actually, we've been raising the question of the right moment for the entire period since the collapse of the first phase. But we have seen a momentum that started to build in the last month for that, working together very closely with our partners.
All right, so there is Mohammed Al Thani, the foreign minister of Qatar, talking about what he believes could be the beginning of the last days of the war. We'll see if it indeed bears fruit, because these things historically have been a little thorny and most times, have fallen apart. So we'll see where this all goes, but promising at least in the near term.
But bottom line, obviously there's a confirmation of some serious ongoing negotiations behind the scenes that we know, we have been told from the president-elect and his Middle East envoy have been ongoing. We'll see where this goes as we work our way to the 9 o'clock hour there in Tel Aviv. John, and we'll bring our viewers any news from there as we get it, especially from the Prime Minister's office.
All right, there's a lot ahead, a lot that could go right and a lot that could go wrong. All right, now behind me on Capitol Hill today, there is a triumvirate of Senate confirmation hearings. Pam Bondi, John Ratcliffe, and Senator Marco Rubio to be the Secretary of State. Pam Bondi has been on the hot seat from Democrats, including this exchange with Adam Schiff, where he asked if Bondi would seek to go after Jack Smith. Listen here.
Will you investigate Jack Smith?
Senator, I haven't seen the file. I haven't seen the investigation. I haven't looked at anything. It would be irresponsible of me to make a commitment regarding anything without, you're a long practicing attorney, without looking at a file.
So you would need a factual predicate to open an investigation of Jack Smith, isn't that
Not
right?
a summary by you sitting here. Yes, sir.
Let me ask you a different simple question. The president also wants to jail Liz Cheney. Sitting here today, are you aware of any factual basis to investigate Liz Cheney? Yes or no?
Senator, that's a hypothetical, and I'm not going to answer that.
No, it's not hypothetical. I'm asking you, sitting here today, whether you are aware of a factual predicate to investigate Liz Cheney.
Senator, no one
Based
has
on
asked
what you
me
know.
to investigate Liz Cheney. That is a
The president has
hypothetical.
called for it publicly. You are aware of that, aren't you?
No one has asked me to investigate.
But the president
Liz.
has
We're
called-
also
the
worried about
president-
Liz Cheney,
the
Senator.
president has
You know what
called
we
for
should
this-
be worried about?
Ms. Bondi,
The
please
crime rate
answer
in
my questions.
California right now
You are
is
aware,
through the roof.
Whitney, Donald Trump, you lost the 2020 election. Can you tell us that here today?
Senator, what I can tell you is I will never play politics. You're trying to engage me in a gotcha. I
No,
won't
I'm just
do it.
asking a simple
I
question.
won't play
If you can
politics
speak truth
with any
to
ongoing
power. So let me ask you another.
like you did
let me-
leaking your
let me ask
colleague
you,
Devin Nunes's memo.
And that's the way it's been through much of the day as the Democrats go after Pam Bondi. And let's go now live back to the hearing.
Where there's a regular process where the DOJ and the clemency process is looked at to see whether there are reforms that should be made and recommendations that could be made to the president throughout his term.
I would love to look at that process. I can tell you that the pardons, the commutations that Joe Biden just made were abhorrent to me, absolutely abhorrent, taking people off death row. I looked at the facts of many of those cases and they were so troubling to me. I don't know what process you intend to implement, but I would love to study that with you.
Well, we talked positively about your experience and mine with drug courts, veterans courts, mental health courts. There are some things we will continue to disagree about and other things I hope we can work on together. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, as you're aware, criminal justice reform has been an important part of my role on this committee. I worked for the better part of a decade with Senator Durbin, Chairman Grassley, Senator Whitehouse, Senator Cornyn, Senator Booker, and a bunch of others to eventually pass the First Step Act, which President Trump signed into law in December of 2018. The First Step Act, as the name implies, was intended to be the first of multiple steps. Much remains to be done, including with the implementation of the First Step Act. The credits available under the First Step Act are still being implemented and need more. I assume you'd be willing, if confirmed, to help us continue to implement the First Step Act.
Yes, Senator. And also, I just learned, it's my understanding, I don't know for fact, but it's my understanding that a lot of those beds for halfway houses, for reentry, have not been filled under the First Step Act. So if that's true, I want to look at that right away and figure out why.
Right. And I think other reforms like the Safer Supervision Act, of which I'm a co-sponsor, can also be helpful on that front. It's always important to make sure that we're running, although ours is not the largest criminal law enforcement institution in the country, meaning the states themselves have far more criminal cases, far more prisoners under their jurisdiction collectively than the United States government does. And nonetheless, it is a significant presence, and states often look to the federal government, sometimes for good, other times for ill, on leadership as to where they should take their own criminal justice system. And so it's important that we get this right, especially given that we've been wrong at times in the past. I also think it's important to address the topic of overcriminalization. A few years ago, a few of us on this committee decided that we wanted to find out how many federal crimes are on the books. We reached out to the Congressional Research Service, the CRS, whose job it is to answer such questions like this when members have these questions. The answer that came back was stunning. The answer that came back was to the effect that the answer is unknown and unknowable, but at least 300,000. A lot of the reason for this is that there are a lot of instances in which federal regulations impose criminal penalties. Often without Congress independently enacting anything, just using some sort of delegated lawmaking authority from Congress, which ought not be okay, but incorporating elements of a criminal offense into a criminal regulation, which, we add to the Code of Federal Regulations at a clip of around 100,000 pages a year, give or take, depending on which parts of the Federal Register that you add to the CFR at the end of each year. Seems highly problematic to me for multiple reasons. Reason number one, of course, are that Article 1, Sections 1 and 7 make clear that you cannot make a federal law or change a federal law without Congress, without both houses of Congress passing the same text, submitting it to the president. Reason number two, oftentimes when this happens, you end up with an either absent or hugely ambiguous mens rea, meaning the standard of intent with which one must have acted in order to commit the criminal offense in question is often absent or at least so murky that nobody can tell what it means. Both of these things, of course, lead to huge problems for defendants and for the liberty interests of the American people. So I'd ask that you, if confirmed, help work with us on these things and share any thoughts you might have on them.
Yes, Senator, and I wasn't aware of the mens rea issue, yes.
Senator Klobuchar.
Very good. Thank you very much.
President Biden now remarking on the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. Let's listen.
I can announce a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached between Israel and Hamas. More than 15 months of conflict began with Hezbollah's brutal massacre on October the 7th. More than 15 months of terror for the hostages, their families, the Israeli people. More than 15 months of suffering by the innocent people of Gaza. Fighting in Gaza will stop, and soon the hostages will return home to their families. The elements of this deal were what I laid out in detail this past May, which was embraced by countries around the world and endorsed overwhelmingly by the UN Security Council. The deal is structured in 3 phases. Phase 1 will last 6 weeks. It includes a full and complete ceasefire, withdrawal of Israeli forces from all the populated areas of Gaza, and the release of a number of hostages held by Hamas, including women and elderly and the wounded. And I'm proud to say Americans will be part of that hostage release in phase 1 as well. And the Vice President and I cannot wait to welcome them home. In exchange, Israel released hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. And during phase 1, the Palestinians can also return to their neighborhoods in all the areas of Gaza. And the surge of humanitarian assistance in the Gaza will begin. And the innocent people can have a greater access to these vital supplies. You know, during the next 6 weeks, Israel will negotiate the necessary arrangements to get phase 2, which is a permanent end of the war. Let me say it again, a permanent end of the war. There are a number of details to negotiate to move from phase 1 to phase 2, but the plan says if negotiations take longer than 6 weeks, the ceasefire will continue as long as the negotiations continue. I've spoken to the Emir of Kuwait and the President of Egypt, and we have pledged to make sure the negotiations will keep moving forward for as long as it takes. Then, when phase 2 begins, there will be an exchange for release of the remaining living hostages, including male soldiers, and all remaining Israeli forces will be withdrawn from Gaza, and the temporary ceasefire will become permanent. And finally, phase 3, any final remains of hostages who have been killed will be returned to their families, and a major reconstruction plan for Gaza will begin. This is the ceasefire agreement I introduced last spring. Today, Hamas and Israel have agreed to that ceasefire agreement and the whole ending the war. You know, those of you who have followed the negotiations can attest, the road to this deal has not been easy. I've worked in foreign policy for decades. This is one of the toughest negotiations I've ever experienced. And we reached this point because of the pressure that Israel built on Hamas, backed by the United States. Hamas's longtime leader, Sinwar, was killed. Hamas's strongest supporter, Iran, launched attacks on Israel. And those attacks failed after my administration organized a coalition of nations to stop them. And after I ordered the U.S. ships and planes to come to Israel's defense, we also shaped Israel's strong and calibrated response, destroying Iran's air defenses, but avoiding an escalatory cycle of an all-out war. The United States also organized a coalition of 20 countries to stand up to attacks by the Houthis, including their missile attacks in Israel. Then Hezbollah, another of Hamas's strongest backers, was significantly weakened on the battlefield, and its leadership was destroyed. With our support, Israel negotiated a ceasefire with them, and after that, Lebanon finally elected a new president who's not beholden to Hezbollah, and he can begin a new chapter for the Lebanese people. All told, these developments in the region, which the United States helped to shape,
changed the equation. And so now, the terror network that once protected and sustained Hamas is far weaker. Iran is weaker. Iran is weaker than it's been in decades. Hezbollah is badly degraded. And after more than 15 months of war, Hamas's senior leaders are dead. Thousands of Hamas fighters are dead. And the military formations have been destroyed. With nowhere to turn, Hamas finally agreed to releasing hostages. You know, there was no other way for this war to end than with a hostage deal. And I'm deeply satisfied this day has finally come, for the sake of the people of Israel and the families waiting in agony, and for the sake of the innocent people in Gaza who suffered unimaginable devastation because of the war. The Palestinian people have gone through hell. Too many innocent people have died. Too many communities have been destroyed. And this deal, the people of Gaza can finally recover and rebuild. They can look to a future without Hamas in power. You know, the Bible says, blessed are the peacemakers. Many peacemakers helped make this deal happen, including an extraordinary team of American diplomats who have worked nonstop for months to get this done. Secretary Blinken led the effort. Secretary Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Bill Byrne, John Feiner, Brett McGurk, Amos Hochstein, and the Vice President worked relentlessly as we work to deliver this deal. I'd also note this deal was developed and negotiated under my administration, but its terms will be implemented for the most part by the next administration. In these past few days, we've been speaking as one team. This has been time of real turmoil in the Middle East. But as I prepare to leave office, our friends are strong, our enemies are weak, and there's a genuine opportunities for a new future. In Lebanon, there's an opportunity for a future, free from the grip of Hezbollah. In Syria, a future.
Would you fuck that guy? I don't know anything about that. Lots of guys got them shirts. Do you have any idea how your work ended up at crime scenes from 3 different murders?
I bought a new hot sauce.
I've been making scale models since I was 9 years old.
Sweet baby Ray's.
I sell my stuff at craft fairs, at the hobby shops, over the internet.
I don't know, we'll see.
Every damn place. Sold things to hundreds of people over the years. Any of them could have ended up in the hands of your killer. You're just picking on an old man because you got nothing. We're just talking here, Ernie. We're just talking. You're charging me with something. You want a cup of coffee, Ernie? We got decaf. Charge me. Or let me go. I want a lawyer. You're free to go.
Shit. Oh. Wait, no.
So is he right? Are we really just picking on an old man? Or is he the bad guy?
Oh, I was gonna say.
He's associated peripherally with all the victims, and he certainly has the right skills. Yeah. He spent half his life in Locomotiveville. I know what it's like to lose yourself in little things. After a while, it gets to you.
We're coming up goose eggs on Cement Boy and his lady friend.
You gotta be kidding.
No hits in Apis, no hits in CODIS. Guy's got no work card, and his keys wouldn't match to any vehicle in a 3-block radius of the construction site.
Unbelievable.
Apparently just a couple of law-abiding folks.
Keep me posted.
Hello, Jim.
Hello.
Hello. Who?
No, I don't need your name to arrest you. I wouldn't call you John Doe. Okay, let's assume for the moment that you did know the dead lady laying 5 feet from where we found you. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that you killed her and then you tried to dispose of her body, but you did something very, very stupid. Are you with me so far?
Interesting. Do you have the time, Jim?
Yeah.
Because it looks like it's $10:30. You owe me $10.
Make sure this goes in his personal effects. Now I'm going to suggest you get a name tag. Put the name Trixie on it, because that's what your cellmates will be calling you. Take him to the cell.
Anybody want anything from vending machines? Come on, it's on me. Actually, it's on Jimbo. Took this baby off Captain Brass myself. Look at me, generating income my first day in the joint. God, Mom would be so proud. Not hungry? Soda, maybe? Anybody?
Hi, Max.
Hi, Susie.
Hi, Max.
Yeah, I killed my wife, but it was an accident.
You accidentally stabbed her through the heart.
That's right. Believe me or don't believe me, I don't care. It's the truth.
Max, you got coffee on your shirt. You're gonna be late.
Just
You're just so no shirt.
Max, I want to believe you, but
If I wanted to, do you think I would have dropped a bowl of Jello and stabbed her with a piece of broken glass?
but if it was an accident, why didn't you just pick up the phone and call the police?
Because I killed my granny, okay? It was a long time ago, and it was an accident. She stroked out. It wasn't my fault. They never should have put the oxygen line there. They let me off for that, but I didn't think anyone would believe me this time.
You were never convicted of killing your grandmother,
No.
which is why you don't have a record.
You would have found out eventually and held it against me.
All right, what about your neighbor, Mrs. Ivanovna? Did you kill her, or was that an accident?
I just wanted to talk to her. Thought I could make it be okay. Mrs. Ivanovna? Hello? Hello, what do you want? Good morning. I was wondering if I might borrow some sugar. I get sugar. You stay. Sure. I get sugar. Stay. Yeah. I get. Yes. I get. You stay. Can't have my coffee or my sugar. Last thing was hurt that lady. Mrs. Ivanovna, it's not what you think. No, Mrs. Ivanovna, it's not what you think. No, thanks. Oh, God. Mrs. Ivanovna. She was dead. So, you know, I thought
Well, that sounds healthy.
maybe I would have suicide. It was not a good start to the day.
Oy.
What are you getting a job at them? Diet now.
Maybe. Oh.